The hyperspace alarm screamed through Wright's flagship as something enormous tore through the fabric of space near New Terra's system. Jake Morrison watched the main display with growing horror as sensors tried to make sense of what was approaching. The readings made no sense. Whatever was coming was bigger than a moon and moved in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. "What is that thing?" Jake asked, staring at the massive dark shape that seemed to bend light around itself. "Admiral." Ben Wright's face was grim. "That's a harvester, the Devourer's main weapon. It's what destroyed the ancient civilizations that built the Dead Zone cities." Colonel Nancy Blake worked at a control panel, her fingers flying over displays that showed tactical information. "It's not just a ship," she explained. "It's a living weapon built from the remains of consumed worlds. Every civilization it destroys becomes part of its structure." Jake felt sick as he understood what she meant. The thing approaching them wasn't just alien technology. It was made from the bones and metal of 1,000 dead worlds, turned into a weapon against the living. Captain Pete Johnson called out from his station. "Admiral, it's launching smaller vessels. Thousands of them." On the screen, Jake could see dark shapes pouring out of the harvester like insects from a disturbed hive. Each one was the size of a Zephyrian battleship, but they moved with unnatural grace, flowing through space like living creatures. "Those are Reapers," Wright said. "They collect living beings and technology for the harvester to absorb. If they reach New Terra, they won't," Jake said firmly. He activated his communication device and sent a signal to the colony. "This is Commander Morrison to all New Terra personnel. We're facing a new enemy, something worse than the Zephyrians. All civilians are to evacuate to the underground shelters immediately." Wright nodded with approval. "Good, but shelters won't be enough if those Reapers land." Dr. Lisa Harper, who had been studying the ancient crystal and the technology around her, suddenly spoke up. "Admiral, I think I understand how your weapons work. They're not just destroying matter, they're erasing things from existence itself. The ancient ones called it quantum nullification," Wright confirmed. "Instead of blowing things up, we remove them from the timeline. It's the only way to hurt something like the harvester." "But it's not enough, is it?" Jake asked, seeing the worry in Wright's eyes. "Not against something that size," Wright admitted. "We can hurt it, slow it down, but destroying it completely would take our entire fleet. And even then..." The Reapers reached the outer edge of the system and began spreading out, surrounding Wright's fleet. Unlike the Zephyrians, these creatures didn't announce themselves or make threats. They simply attacked with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. Wright's ships responded with their quantum nullification weapons, erasing dozens of Reapers from existence. But for every one destroyed, 3 more took its place. The harvester continued its slow approach, growing larger and more terrifying as it came closer. "We can't win this fight," Captain Rick Carter said over the radio from his position near New Terra. "There are too many of them." Jake looked around the bridge at the faces of Wright's crew. These were people who had fought this enemy for 800 years, and even they looked worried. But he also saw something else in their eyes: determination. They weren't going to give up even if they were about to die. "Admiral," Jake said, "you told me about becoming something more than human. What if we don't have centuries to change? What if we have to do it right now?" Wright stared at him. "What are you suggesting?" "The ancient crystal didn't just call for help," Jake said, his mind racing. "It connected us across time and space. What if we could use that connection to do more than just communicate?" Lisa's eyes widened as she understood. "You want to link our minds with the ancient technology, share knowledge and experience instantly, instead of learning it over years." "It's never been tried with living people," Wright said. "The process could kill you or worse, leave you trapped between different points in time. We're going to die anyway if we don't try," Jake pointed out. Wright was quiet for a moment, considering. Around them, the battle raged as his ships fought desperately against the approaching Reapers. Several human vessels had already been destroyed, their crews absorbed by the enemy. "There's something else," Wright said finally. "If we do this, if we link ourselves with the ancient network, we become part of it permanently. We become guardians of the galaxy, but we lose our connection to individual human lives. We become something that thinks in terms of species and civilizations instead of people. Jake understood the price. He would gain the power and knowledge to fight the devourer, but he would lose the ability to care about individual human beings the way he did now. He would become like Wright and his crew, powerful but distant, wise but lonely. How many of us would need to make this choice, Jake asked. All of us, Wright said. The network requires multiple minds working together. It can't be done halfway. Jake looked at Lisa, Rick, Tony Rodriguez, and the other colonists who had come aboard Wright's ship. They were scared, but they were also ready. They had already faced death once today. I need to ask my people, Jake said. Wright nodded. But ask quickly. We have minutes at most. Jake activated the colony-wide communication system and explained the situation to everyone on New Terra. The choice wasn't just for the people on Wright's ship. It was for every human in the colony. The response came quickly. One by one, voices came over the radio. Men and women, young and old, all giving the same answer. They would rather become something strange and powerful than let the devourer consume their world. It's unanimous, Rick reported. Every adult in the colony volunteers. Wright looked surprised. You understand what you're choosing? You'll live for thousands of years, but you'll watch civilizations rise and fall like seasons changing. You'll have the power to save worlds, but you'll lose the ability to love individual people the way humans do now. We understand, Jake said. But we also understand that if we don't make this choice, there won't be any individual people left to love. Wright smiled sadly. Spoken like true guardians. He activated the ancient systems built into his ship. Very well. Let's become something new. The process was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. His mind expanded, suddenly containing the memories and knowledge of 1,000,000 different beings. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations that existed before Earth was formed. He understood technologies that human science wouldn't discover for centuries. He felt the pain of every world the devourer had consumed, and the hope of every species that had fought against it. When it was over, Jake Morrison was still human, but he was also something more. He looked around at his companions and saw the same transformation in their eyes. They were connected now, part of a network that spanned galaxies and centuries. The battle against the Reapers was swift after that. With their new understanding of ancient weapons and tactics, the humans struck with precision and power that surprised even Wright's experienced crew. The Reapers were destroyed or driven away, and the massive harvester retreated into hyperspace, wounded and angry. It will be back, Wright said as they watched the enemy flee. The devourer doesn't give up easily. Let it come, Jake replied, his voice carrying new authority. We'll be ready. New Terra Colony would become something different now, not just a human settlement, but a training ground for new guardians. People would come from across the galaxy to learn how to fight the devourer and protect their worlds. And in the depths of space, in a region called the Dead Zone, humanity's true empire began to grow. An empire built not on conquest but on the promise that no world would fall alone, and no species would face extinction without hope. The final call had been answered. The lost civilization had been found, and it turned out to be humanity itself, transformed and ready to take its place among the ancient guardians of the galaxy. The alien research station was hidden inside a huge asteroid. From the outside, it looked like just another rock floating in space. Inside, it was a nightmare. Lisa was dragged through long corridors lined with cells. In each cell was a different type of creature. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange she couldn't understand what she was seeing. All of them looked broken and afraid. Fresh specimens arrived daily, said the alien, pulling her along. Its translator device made its voice sound calm and friendly, which made the words even more horrible. Some last days, others only hours. We will see how long you survive. They stopped at a cell near the end of the corridor. The alien pushed Lisa inside and sealed the door. The cell was small and white, with a hard bench and nothing else. A slot in the door let food and water through, but barely enough to keep someone alive. Lisa sat on the bench and tried not to think about what was coming. Through the walls she could hear sounds, crying, screaming, sometimes just silence, which was worse. On her second day, they came for her. The lead researcher called himself Vexthal. He was bigger than the other aliens, with scars across his black shell that looked like decorations. His multiple eyes studied Lisa like she was an interesting insect. Human female, age approximately 24 of your years, he said to another alien who was writing notes. Brain activity shows high intelligence. Emotional responses are strong. This should provide excellent data. They strapped Lisa to a table in a white room full of machines. Some of the devices looked like medical equipment. Others were clearly built for torture. Vexthal moved around the table, checking various instruments. We have studied many species, he told Lisa. Each one teaches us something new about pain and suffering. Your species is unknown to us, so this will be particularly educational. Please, Lisa said. I haven't done anything wrong. None of us did. We just wanted to meet you peacefully. Peace is weakness, Vexthal replied. Only through pain do we learn the true limits of life. Your species will thank us for the knowledge we gain. The torture began with electricity. Small shocks at first, then larger ones. Lisa tried to be brave, but the pain was unlike anything she had ever felt. It went on and on, with Vexthal making notes about her reactions. Interesting, he said. Your species shows remarkable resistance to electrical stimulus. Let us try something else. They used machines that squeezed her bones until she thought they would break. They put chemicals on her skin that burned without leaving marks. They played sounds so loud and painful that she screamed just to try to block them out. But the worst torture was something Lisa hadn't expected. The aliens had technology that could create pain directly in the brain. They put a device on her head that made her feel like she was burning alive while being frozen solid at the same time. Like every bone in her body was breaking over and over again. Your neural patterns are fascinating, Vexthal said, watching his instruments. Most species break mentally within the first hour. You have been conscious and aware for much longer. Lisa could barely speak through the pain. Why are you doing this? Knowledge, Vexthal answered. We have learned that pain is the one universal constant. Every living thing can suffer. By studying that suffering, we understand life itself. Hours passed, though Lisa lost track of time. Sometimes the pain stopped for a few minutes, long enough for her to catch her breath. Then it started again, worse than before. During one of these brief breaks, something strange happened. The lights in the room flickered. Some of the machines made odd noises, and their screens showed weird patterns. Vexthal frowned and checked his equipment. Minor system malfunction, he told his assistant. Nothing important. Continue the procedure. But Lisa felt something else. In the deepest moments of pain, when she thought she couldn't take any more, she sensed something watching her. Something in the darkness behind her closed eyes. It felt old and vast and empty, but not unfriendly. As the torture continued, this presence grew stronger. Lisa began to feel like she was falling into an endless black space. The pain was still there, but it seemed farther away, like it was happening to someone else. Subject is showing unusual brain activity, the assistant reported. Neural patterns are changing. Increase the intensity, Vexthal ordered. I want to see what happens when we push beyond normal limits. The pain came back stronger than ever. Lisa screamed until her throat was raw, but part of her was somewhere else now. In that dark, quiet place, something spoke to her without words. It showed her things. The aliens' cruelty to countless victims, the suffering they had caused across the galaxy, the fear they spread wherever they went. And then it offered her something. Power, revenge. The ability to make them pay for what they had done. All she had to do was let the darkness in. Lisa was dying. She could feel her heart beating slower and slower. Her body was shutting down from the trauma. But her mind was crystal clear for the first time in hours. Yes, she whispered. The darkness rushed into her like a flood. For a moment, she felt incredible pain as something fundamental changed inside her. Then the pain was gone, replaced by a strange sense of floating. Lisa's heart stopped. Her brain activity went flat on all the monitoring devices. The machines around her went silent. Subject expired after 37 minutes, Vexthul noted with disappointment. Shorter than expected for this species. Prepare the body for disposal and bring in the next specimen. But as the aliens began to disconnect their equipment, none of them noticed the small changes happening around Lisa's body. The air seemed to shimmer. Shadows moved in ways that shouldn't be possible. And deep, in her chest, something that was no longer her heart began to beat again. Very slowly, very quietly, Lisa Brooks began to breathe. Lisa opened her eyes, but they were no longer the brown eyes she had been born with. Now they were completely black, like looking into deep space, with tiny points of light that moved like distant stars. She sat up on the examination table. The movement was smooth and quiet, but it made all the machines in the room go crazy. Alarms started ringing. Computer screens flickered and went dark. The lights above her head exploded in showers of sparks. Vexthul and his assistant turned around, shocked. They had been preparing to move Lisa's body to the disposal area. Dead specimens didn't sit up and look around. Impossible, Vexthul said. All life signs stopped. Brain activity was zero. Lisa looked at him. When she spoke, her voice was the same but somehow different. It had echoes in it like she was speaking from the bottom of a deep well. Death is not the end, she said. Sometimes it's just the beginning. She stood up, and the restraints that had held her to the table simply fell apart. They didn't break or unlock. They just stopped being solid and crumbled to dust. The assistant alien tried to run for the door, but Lisa was suddenly standing in front of him. She hadn't walked there. She had just been on the table, and now she was blocking his path. You helped him torture me, she said to the assistant. You watched and took notes while I screamed. She reached out and touched the alien's forehead with one finger. He froze, his multiple eyes going wide. Then he started to scream. But this wasn't a normal scream of fear. This was the sound of someone experiencing every moment of pain he had ever caused to others, all at the same time. The assistant collapsed, shaking and crying. Lisa looked down at him. Now you know how it feels, she said. You will live, but you will remember. Vexthul was backing away, trying to reach a wall communicator to call for help. Lisa turned to him and smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Where are you going, Doctor? We're not finished yet. What are you? Vexthul whispered. I'm what you made me, Lisa replied. You wanted to study pain and death. Congratulations. You succeeded. She walked toward him, and with each step the room around them began to change. The walls started to crack, but not like they were breaking. The cracks looked like holes in reality itself, showing the star-filled darkness beyond. Vexthul pressed himself against the wall. This is impossible. You're just one small creature from a weak species. Weakness? Lisa laughed, and the sound made the floor shake. You don't understand humans at all. We survive things that would destroy other species. We get stronger when we're broken. And when we die protecting others, sometimes the universe gives us a second chance. She reached out and grabbed Vexthul by his throat. Her human hand should not have been strong enough to lift the massive alien, but she raised him off the ground easily. You've tortured thousands of innocent beings, she said. Mothers, children, people who just wanted to explore the stars in peace. You turned their curiosity into agony and called it science. Vexthul tried to speak, but Lisa's grip was too tight. She looked directly into his multiple eyes. I'm going to give you exactly what you gave them, every moment of pain, every second of terror, but you're going to experience it all at once. She pressed her other hand against his shell-covered chest. Vexthul's screams echoed through the research station as decades of cruelty came back to him in an instant. When Lisa finally let him go, he fell to the floor and didn't move. He was still breathing, but his mind was gone. Lisa looked around the torture chamber. With a wave of her hand, all the evil machines crumbled into dust. The walls dissolved, opening the room to the corridor beyond. She walked out into the hallway, and everywhere she went, the prison cells opened by themselves. Creatures from dozens of different worlds stumbled out. weak from torture and imprisonment. Most of them were afraid of her at first. Her eyes and the way reality bent around her made her look dangerous, but when she spoke to them, her voice was gentle. "You're safe now," she told them. "No one will hurt you anymore." She touched the wounded ones, and their injuries healed instantly. The sick ones became healthy again. Those who had been driven mad by torture found their minds clearing for the first time in months or years. "How?" asked a creature that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. "How is this possible?" "I died," Lisa said simply, "but death wasn't strong enough to stop me from protecting innocent people." Alarms were ringing throughout the station now. The alien guards were coming, armed with their energy weapons and protective shields. Lisa could sense them approaching through the walls. "Stay behind me," she told the freed prisoners. The first group of guards rounded the corner, weapons raised. They fired at Lisa with everything they had. Energy beams that could cut through steel hit her and passed right through as if she was made of shadow. Lisa walked toward them, and their weapons simply stopped working. The energy charges faded away and their protective equipment shut down. "Your turn to be afraid," she said. What happened next was justice, but justice delivered by someone who was no longer entirely human. The guards who had only followed orders were left unconscious, but alive. The ones who had enjoyed watching the torture sessions experienced a taste of their own medicine. Lisa moved through the station like a force of nature. Walls couldn't stop her. She walked through them as if they weren't there. Locked doors opened at her approach. Security systems shut down when she looked at them. In the central control room, she found the station's commander. He was trying to destroy the research data before she could reach it, but Lisa stopped time itself around him. His hand froze inches from the delete button. "That data represents thousands of lives," she said. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here." With a gesture, she copied all the information and sent it to every major civilization's communication networks. The proof of the aliens' crimes would be spread across 100 worlds within hours. The commander unfroze and stared at her in terror. "What do you want?" Lisa thought about that question. What did she want? Revenge? Justice? An end to the suffering she had witnessed? "I want you to remember," she finally said. "Every time you look at the stars, I want you to remember that somewhere out there is a human girl who died for 37 minutes and came back with the power to make bullies pay for their crimes. She left the commander alive, but changed. Like all the others, he would carry the weight of his victim's pain for the rest of his life." As Lisa led the freed prisoners to the station's docking bay, she could feel her power growing stronger. The void that had saved her was vast and patient, and it had waited a long time for someone who could use its gifts wisely. She looked at her reflection in a broken mirror and saw a young woman with star-filled eyes who was no longer quite human, but not yet something else entirely. The real work was just beginning. The news of the research station's destruction spread through alien space faster than their fastest ships. At first, the high command of the Kethmori Empire refused to believe the reports. One small human couldn't possibly defeat their most secure facility and free hundreds of prisoners. But the evidence was impossible to ignore. The station was gone, melted into space dust. Survivors from dozens of different species were appearing on neutral worlds, all telling the same story. A human girl with star-filled eyes had walked through walls, healed the wounded, and brought justice to their torturers. Admiral Zekthor read the reports in his private chambers aboard the flagship, Destroyer of Worlds. He was the most feared military commander in Kethmori space, responsible for conquering 17 different star systems. His reputation was built on the complete destruction of any force that opposed him. "Find this human," he ordered his communications officer. "Deploy the entire 7th Fleet. I want 50 warships searching every system between here and the old research station." "Sir," his aide said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiation. The human seems to have power beyond our understanding." Zekthor's multiple eyes focused on the aide with deadly intensity. "Are you suggesting we show fear to a single member of an inferior species? The Kethmori Empire has ruled this section of space for over 3,000 years. We will not be intimidated by one strange human." But Lisa Brooks was no longer just wandering through space. She had a mission now, and she was very good at it. On the mining world of Kepler-7, Kethmori overseers forced captured aliens to dig rare metals from deep underground tunnels. The workers were given barely enough food and water to survive, and those who became too weak to work were simply left to die. Lisa appeared in the main mining complex without warning. One moment the corridors were empty, the next she was standing in the central control room. The Kethmori supervisors reached for their weapons, but Lisa was faster. "Drop your weapons," she said, in a voice that echoed from everywhere at once. "Your slaves are free." The head overseer, a scarred veteran named Kexmar, laughed. "One human against 50 armed guards? You must be insane." Lisa smiled sadly. "I died once already. What's the worst you can do to me now?" The battle was over. In minutes, Lisa moved like liquid shadow, appearing behind guards before they could fire, disabling their weapons with a touch. She didn't kill them, but she made sure they understood what it felt like to be helpless and afraid. The freed miners couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some had been slaves for decades, working in conditions that slowly killed them. Now their chains fell away at Lisa's approach, and their wounds healed when she touched them. "Who are you?" asked an elderly creature whose people had been conquered 20 years earlier. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to suffer," Lisa replied, "and I won't let anyone else go through what I went through." She gathered the freed slaves and transported them to safety, stepping through space itself to carry them to worlds where they would be welcome. The Kethmori mining operation shut down overnight, their entire workforce simply gone. This pattern repeated across a dozen worlds. Slave camps emptied, prison colonies vanished, research facilities found their subjects liberated, and their cruel experiments ended forever. Each time, Lisa left behind evidence of Kethmori crimes for other species to find. Admiral Zekthor's fleet finally caught up with her in the Zarian system, where she was evacuating the last prisoners from a biological testing facility. 50 massive warships surrounded the small transport vessel she was using, each one capable of destroying entire planets. "Human vessel," Zekthor broadcast on all channels. "Surrender immediately, or we will open fire." Lisa's voice came back, over the radio, calm and clear. "I'm done surrendering to bullies." "You are outnumbered 50 to 1, Zekthor replied. "Your small ship cannot possibly stand against the might of the Kethmori fleet." "You're right," Lisa said. "My ship can't fight your fleet." Zekthor smiled with satisfaction. Finally, this strange human was showing some sense. "But I can," Lisa added. She appeared on the bridge of Zekthor's flagship without any kind of transport beam or shuttle. One moment the bridge was secure, the next she was standing in front of the main view screen, her star-filled eyes looking directly at the Admiral. Every weapon system in the fleet stopped working at the same moment. 50 warships, the pride of the Kethmori military, suddenly found themselves defenseless. Their energy cannons went silent, their missiles refused to launch, and their defensive shields flickered and died. "Impossible," Zekthor whispered. Lisa walked toward him, and with each step, more systems on his ship shut down. Life support, artificial gravity, computer networks. Everything the Kethmori depended on simply stopped functioning. "Your empire is built on fear," she said. "You take innocent people from their homes and hurt them for your own amusement. You call it research or conquest or whatever helps you sleep at night, but it's really just cruelty." The bridge crew was backing away from her, terrified. These were soldiers who had faced enemy fleets and planetary defenses, but they had never encountered anything like this human girl who walked through their technology as if it didn't exist. "What do you want?" Zekthor demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. "I want you to feel what your victims felt," Lisa replied. "I want you to know what it's like to be completely helpless, while someone stronger decides whether you live or die." She reached out and touched the Admiral's forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Zekthor screamed as he experienced the terror and pain of every being his fleet had ever conquered. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of thousands of lives destroyed by his orders. Lisa looked around at the other officers. You have a choice. Continue serving an empire built on suffering, or find a better way to live. But if I catch any of you hurting innocent people again, you'll get the same treatment as your admiral. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and your fleet is no longer armed. I've permanently disabled all your weapons. You can fly home safely, but you can't hurt anyone else. As Lisa disappeared from the bridge, Zekthor's communications officer received a message from every other ship in the fleet. All weapon systems were dead, but life support and engines still worked. They could retreat, but they couldn't fight. Some of the younger officers seemed almost relieved. For years they had followed orders they didn't believe in, conquering peaceful worlds and enslaving innocent populations. Now they had an excuse to stop. Zekthor himself was a broken leader. The psychic feedback from Lisa's power had shown him the true cost of his military campaigns. He would live, but he would spend the rest of his life haunted by the memories of his victims. The Kethmori fleet limped back to their home territory, carrying news of their defeat. For the first time, in their civilization's history, they had met a force they could not overcome. But Lisa Brooks was already moving on to her next mission. Her enhanced senses could detect distress calls from across the galaxy, other species facing their own versions of the Kethmori threat. The void whispered to her of ancient evils stirring in distant star systems, of tyrants who thought themselves safe behind their armies and weapons. They would learn, as the Kethmori had learned, that some forces in the universe were beyond their ability to control or understand. Justice had found its champion, and she was just getting started. The planet that would become known as Haven started as just another dead world in neutral space. It had breathable air and water, but the soil was poisoned and nothing could grow there. Lisa found it while searching for a place where the freed, slaves and refugees could build new lives. Standing on the barren surface under a gray sky, Lisa closed her star-filled eyes and reached deep into her connection with the void. The power that had brought her back from death could do more than just fight. It could heal and create. She placed her hands on the poisoned ground, and slowly, life began to return. The toxins in the soil broke down and disappeared. Grass sprouted and spread in green waves across the landscape. Rivers ran clean again and the air grew sweet and fresh. Within hours, what had been a dying world became a paradise. Different climates formed in different regions, perfect for the many species who would call this place home. Forests for those who needed trees, deserts for those who preferred heat, mountains for those who loved high places. The first refugees arrived on old transport ships, barely space-worthy vessels packed with families who had lost everything. They stared in wonder at the transformed world, hardly believing that this beautiful place was really theirs. "How do we thank you?" asked an elderly woman whose people had been slaves for 3 generations. Lisa smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young human she had once been. "Build something good here. Take care of each other. That's all the thanks I need." But creating Haven was only the beginning. News of Lisa's victories had spread throughout the galaxy, and the reactions were as varied as the species who heard them. Some saw her as a savior, others as a dangerous threat to the established order. The Galactic Council, a loose alliance of the major civilizations, sent ambassadors to Haven. They arrived in gleaming diplomatic ships, nervous about meeting the human who had single-handedly destroyed the Kethmori Empire's military power. "We come seeking assurance," said Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Federation. "Your actions, while perhaps justified, have disrupted the balance of power in this sector." Lisa met with them in a simple building on Haven's surface. She wore plain clothes and looked like any other human, except for those star-filled eyes that seemed to see everything. "The balance of power?" she repeated. "You mean the balance that allowed the Kethmori to torture and enslave thousands of innocent people while you did nothing?" Ambassador Veltar shifted uncomfortably. The situation was complex. Direct intervention could have led to a larger war. "So you let them suffer while you held committee meetings," Lisa said. "How noble of you." Another ambassador, this one from the Silicon-based architects, spoke up. We understand your anger, but surely you see that one individual cannot police the entire galaxy. There must be laws, procedures, diplomatic solutions. Lisa stood and walked to the window, looking out at Haven's gardens where former enemies now worked side by side. Where were your laws when my friends were murdered? Where were your diplomatic solutions when I was tortured to death? She turned back to face the ambassadors. I'm not interested in ruling anyone. I just want to protect people who can't protect themselves. If your laws and procedures can do that, great. If not, I'll handle things my own way. The diplomatic meeting ended without any formal agreements, but Lisa had made her position clear. She would not seek power for its own sake, but she would act when innocent lives were at stake. Meanwhile, the Kethmori Empire was collapsing from within. Their slave populations had risen in revolt, inspired by news of Lisa's actions. Without forced labor and test subjects, their technology began to fall behind other civilizations. Many Kethmori fled to distant galaxies rather than face the consequences of their empire's crimes. Some tried to make amends. A group of young Kethmori scientists arrived at Haven, carrying data about their species' medical techniques. They had been working in secret to develop healing methods rather than torture devices. We want to help, their leader, a female named Zarathul, told Lisa. Not all of our people supported what the Empire did. Some of us always believed it was wrong. Lisa studied them with her enhanced senses, seeing deep into their thoughts and motivations. They were telling the truth. These scientists genuinely wanted to use their knowledge to heal rather than harm. Welcome to Haven, she said finally. Your skills will be very useful here. As months passed, Haven grew into something unprecedented in galactic history. Former slaves worked alongside reformed conquerors. Scientists from species that had been at war for centuries collaborated on projects to benefit everyone. Children who had never known anything but fear learned to laugh and play. But Lisa found that her transformation had costs she hadn't expected. The void power that flowed through her made it difficult to connect with normal people. She could sense everyone's emotions and thoughts, which made casual conversation nearly impossible. She aged more slowly than other humans, and sometimes she would phase partially out of reality without meaning to. Late at night, standing on Haven's highest mountain, Lisa would look up at the stars and feel the weight of her responsibilities. The void whispered to her constantly now, showing her suffering on distant worlds, injustices that needed to be corrected, tyrants who needed to face consequences for their actions. She was no longer fully human, but she wasn't entirely something else either. She existed in the space between life and death, between mortal and immortal, between human compassion and cosmic justice. A communication device on her wrist chimed softly. Another distress call from somewhere in the galaxy. This time it was from the Andromeda sector, where a species called the Soul Eaters had begun consuming the life force of entire populations. Lisa sighed and took one last look at Haven's peaceful cities. The former slaves were building libraries and schools. The reformed Kethmori were teaching healing techniques to anyone who wanted to learn. Children from a dozen different species played together in parks where flowers from 100 different worlds bloomed under alien suns. It was beautiful, and it was what she had died to protect. But there were others out there who needed protection too. Others who faced the same kind of suffering she had endured. Lisa stepped into the darkness between the stars and vanished, reappearing light years away where a new crisis waited. Behind her, Haven continued to grow and prosper, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had seen too much darkness. She had been a communications officer once, trying to make contact with unknown species. Now she was something else entirely, a guardian standing watch over the innocent, a force for justice powered by the infinite darkness between the stars. The girl who had died screaming in a torture chamber had become something the galaxy had never seen before. She was human compassion backed by cosmic power, mortal determination enhanced by immortal patience, and she would never stop fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. In the distance, her enhanced hearing caught the faint echo of distress, calls from civilizations she had never heard of, facing threats she had yet to encounter. Lisa smiled grimly and stepped deeper into the void, ready to answer every call for help that reached her across the vast emptiness of space. The universe was full of bullies who thought their power made them untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were,